Hello, world. My name's Angela, and I'm with my friend Ray. Hello, Ray.
Hey world.
So, I we really have been wanting to kind of geek out about Wonder Woman, and also from like our perspective, our personal perspectives. Like you are way more of a comic book person than I am, or just I think like more of a comic superhero geek in general. Like the only real geekdom that I have is Star Wars. So you can kind of
Which you
bring
are
that.
amazing with, by the way. I'm
Thank
always
you. I
really
appreciate
impressed.
that.
Like I saw, did you read the Force Awakens book like in one day? Am I
The
right?
Force Awakens book? Are you
Yeah,
talking about? Oh,
I
I,
remember a
I
book
haven't
coming
I
in and,
haven't
and
read the novelization of it. But what I have read of the recent canon is the Rogue One uh,
right.
kind of prequel book. So yeah, I read that really fast. I devour those novels. So
I followed that on social media and I was impressed. So
thank you. But anyway, talking about Wonder Woman. Um, so I just want to know, like, when was the first time that you even heard of Wonder Woman, or like
oh man.
how what does she mean to you?
I think the earliest memories I have of Wonder Woman are from the Justice League cartoons that were
Okay.
out when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Justice League Unlimited in particular. And just being a DC fan all my life, I was a Batman fan from Batman the Animated Series when I was a young lad, and just followed through cartoons. As a kid, it was all cartoons and movies, Batman, Superman, and if you know anything about the DC universe, they have their Trinity. They call them their Trinity. It's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And so I followed Wonder Woman kind of peripherally all my childhood by just being a DC fan. Um, when I became a man, uh, I started having money of my own to spend. I started getting into comic books and buying comic books when I was like 19,
Hmm.
and that's when I really started to get into Wonder Woman. I started reading her New 52 run, which is DC's kind of the universe from 2011. Read through that mostly. I'm still trying to finish it. There's still spots that I missed. Um, and that's where I really started to fall in love with Wonder Woman. I had a friend of mine who was truly, truly a comic book nerd. He's a naval intelligence officer and a comic book geek, and so he and I would talk about Wonder Woman all the time. And it in Wonder Woman, and I don't want to jump the gun too much with our conversation, but just in short, in Wonder Woman, I started to see all the things that I was falling in love with in my understanding of women in general, in the context of my favorite way of telling stories, which is comic books. And so, in short, that's where my fascination started and where it is now.
Yeah. And for me personally, like I've always known that Wonder Woman like exists and that she's been around for like a really long time. Like when do you know the year that she was like created? It was like 75 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, we're in the 76th year, so I'll let the nerds do math on that. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Yeah. So
It's in the 40s. She was I think 3 years after Superman, so she's really early on
okay, yeah.
fighting Nazis and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. So like I had always based it, I mean, it's just general pop culture, like just, existing, you kind of just know these things. But I really didn't know that much about her at all. Like I mean, I knew she had like a lasso thing, and like the bracelets and the crown deal, but
Yeah,
like I really didn't know that much.
tiara.
And yeah, like until the first trailer from San Diego Comic-Con came out like 10 months ago. And once I saw that and I saw the posters that they released, I was just like, whoa, what is this? Because obviously I'm a woman, but also I like in my line of work, I deal a lot with like women, ministry for women. Like I work at a nonprofit Catholic ministry. And so like just theology of woman and all that stuff is like really big to me and like into my personal like journey too. So I was totally like into it once I like just Googled her and I started learning more about her. And I just thought like, wow, this is a really cool connection to like my faith, you know?
Yeah. Did you read any comics?
I didn't because I knew the movie was coming out. And you know how it is when they create a movie like based on something else, it's usually like if you read any of the original content first, you sometimes are disappointed with the movie. So like I didn't want to do that. I just kind of want to come in clean and just like be open to anything and not have any preconceived notions, you know?
Yeah, I respect that. Movie definitely lived up to the comics, for the record. So
that's awesome. I love that when that happens. It seems like a rare occasion these days. So yeah. So in general, like just going into the movie, so you saw it, when did you see it?
I saw it Thursday night.
So opening
you know how
night,
it came
basically.
out, right? It comes out on Friday, but now all the movies, it's just on Thursday before. So I saw a Thursday night showing at the theater by my house, and it's if anyone's in San Antonio, it was Casablanca Theater, which people in San Antonio know is like this state-of-the-art huge screen with like AVX projection, and it was just like Gal Gadot on like a 70-foot screen. It was the best possible way to watch this movie.
And
so
what
yeah,
was
opening night, I had my tickets for a while.
And what was your like feeling going into it and then like coming out of it? Like how did you feel?
Oh man. I've been looking forward to this for years. Since they announced Batman versus Superman, and I realized that they were going to turn the Man of Steel universe into a DC movie universe, I've been waiting for a Wonder Woman movie. When it's first announced that Gal Gadot got cast, I've been waiting for this movie. When they first announced that they were doing the movie, I've been waiting for this movie. So I haven't had this much excitement about a movie leading up to it since Batman vs Superman or the Avengers, which we kind of forget how crazy the Avengers was as a movie because now superheroes are everywhere, but it was this crazy thing of like all the superheroes you ever heard of in one movie. So my heart was pounding. I was at work. My work day just flew by. I went with one of my good friends. I have one friend I'm allowed to see DCEU movies with because he loves them as much as I do, and he's not looking to critique them the way that people like to critique them. And I was just, my heart was pounding, and the lights went down, and I was sweating. And
that's a geek right there. That's how you know.
From frame one, I haven't figured out a not creepy way to say this, so I'm just gonna let you advocate on my behalf that I'm not a creepy guy. When I got there, we have assigned seating. I get there, and to my left is my buddy. It is a little girl, and she looked to be like 10 years old, and I was so excited to get to experience it that way, to watch the Wonder Woman movie next to a 10-year-old girl, and like going through the movie and the parts where I'd be like, oh man, she'd be right next to me like, oh man, and like tapping her mom and like, that's so and so, and look what she's doing there, that's the lasso of truth. It took the movie to another level that I did not expect. To see a little girl's hero come to life on the screen is maybe the only way to make one of my heroes coming to life on the screen even better. But I love the movie. They were so true to the things that I love about Wonder Woman, the things that attract me to her character and to her stories, the things that I really wanted to see in the movie were all there. And I don't cry much. I do this thing where I like well up and I go like, but I don't cry, like tears. Angela, I was crying through the whole movie. The whole movie, every time something cool would happen, I'd just be like, it's happening. everything I love. It was so well executed, and we don't want to get into spoilers just yet, but the tone, and it's like they knew exactly, Patty Jenkins knew exactly what the heart of Wonder Woman was, and she puts it on display so well in that movie. And it was exhausting for me, honestly. I left the movie exhausted from being so invested and so in love with it.
That's cool. Yeah, like I saw it yesterday, Friday. So, and I went with my husband. So I wasn't alone. But when we were going in, like before we had even gone in the movie, I was watching all these like, you know, pundits that I like watching on YouTube and stuff, and how they were just like, oh, the hype is real. This is so good. And I was like, oh man, like I don't want to get too pumped up to where like I'm expecting something like that's totally not even possible. But yeah, like so I went, and when we were walking into the theater, I saw a lot of moms and daughters, like just a lot of little girls everywhere. And they were dressed up, and they were wearing like skirts and capes, and it was really neat. And I can't remember the last time that happened. And actually, I was a little bit like concerned seeing that too. Like, oh my gosh, we're seeing this movie with so many children. Like, I was worried that like, you know, I was going to get kicked in the back of the head, and like I was going to be crying and screaming and yelling. That was not going to enhance the movie. But actually, it was the exact opposite. It was really great. Yeah, like I was sitting, Dan was on one side, and then like a mom and her like probably 7 or 6-year-old was next to me, little girl, and they were like super excited about everything. And yeah, like I cried through almost the whole thing. Like, yeah, no spoilers right now, but like at the beginning, I was just like, I was a little bit ashamed. I was like, I'm crying already. Like, this is not a good sign. Like, I was trying so hard to be like, no, you cannot cry right now. But yeah, like, and I did bring Kleenex for that, because I had heard that it was like you're gonna cry, but
you're smarter than I am.
Yeah. So, well, a woman in her purse, you know, gotta bring everything. So, yeah.
No, you're right. From the beginning, there's like the one theme through the movie is just beauty. And from the first frame, it's just like so transcendently beautiful. And it just like, it grabbed me right here, man. From like the first shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, and especially just like the parts like about like her origin story, and her as a little girl, I was just like, you know, oh my gosh, I don't know what it was, something that I can't really rationally explain. I guess like being a woman and like seeing, you know, all these things, like here's this superhero and here's her as a little girl, and like, oh, you've been a little girl too, like, you know, so seeing all these things that I had never seen before was, I think, just touching me in like at a level that I can't even like describe, you know, like with words, you know what I'm saying? But just, yeah, just like it was really fun, and there were surprises in the movie, and then just like walking out, I was just like, wow, that was great. I want to see it like immediately again, you know, and bring my sister and bring my mom and like, you know, all my aunts and, you know, just everybody to come see it with me. So it was great.
and it's a, you know, for anyone listening, it's a great movie, period. Man, woman, whoever, it's fantastic. It's a summer blockbuster. It's a superhero movie, but there's just something different about it that I can't put my finger on, that I'm hoping you can help me suss out. I mean, it was written by guys, you know, guys that I know from the industry, not personally, but I know of from the industry, who tell these stories. But to have the execution in the hands of women, and that Warner Brothers made a point of doing that, it's just got a certain a lens over it that's just we've never seen in a superhero movie before. And I think that's why women and their daughters are responding to it so well. So everyone should go see it, but there's something really, really special about the way it's impacting women in our culture as well.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of like controversy and there's a lot of like talk and news and stuff that you can kind of get elsewhere. Like that's not really why we're here talking about this, but yeah, like I think it is like an important film, like for many different reasons. And it happens to be a superhero movie, which, you know, normally you don't really take seriously or you don't really think it can impact you.
I do, but go ahead.
Well, I guess the general public, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, oh, it's a superhero movie. It's fun. You know, it's summertime, you know, let's go eat popcorn. But yeah, like you know, I've heard people talk about how like, oh, there's too many superhero movies these days. Like it's because we live in a godless culture and people need God and they're not like going to God and stuff like that. Like,
what kind of like pretentious people are you hanging out with? That's what they. How about it's cool? There's like a guy and he punches a building and it falls. It's cool.
Yeah, like there's many different levels to that. I mean, yeah, like obviously people who are looking at it that way are kind of looking at it from a certain perspective, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, it is supposed to be fun. Like it's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be, you know, a good time. And that's what this was, you know, for sure. But I think kind of part of what you're talking about, the different aspect to it is that it is being told, it's a story about a woman, and it's being, yeah, like it was directed by a woman, so it's a story that's being told, you know, by a woman, basically, you know what I'm saying? And through her eyes and through her heart, you know, like women really, like, you know, we see things in a different way oftentimes
Absolutely.
through with our hearts. And so I think that's why, you know, and I saw it when I saw Batman vs Superman, like, and Wonder Woman showed up. I liked that part of it. I thought it was really
the best
cool.
Part.
But you know, one thing that I really appreciate about Batman vs Superman was like some of the deeper like messages behind it that I think a lot of people maybe didn't get, but I totally got. So I don't know. It's just like, it's like everything, you know, art, you know, people will take whatever they will from it, you know, but I guess what we want to talk about is kind of what we got out of it, because like, you know, well, okay, so maybe you can explain like a little bit about what you posted like on Facebook, like after you saw the movie, and like why you said that.
So I have to pull up my Facebook post real quick because
I
I don't
mean, you
remember
don't
what I
have to
said.
read it like verbatim, but just the general idea of it.
I think that's what the people want to hear is me just reading
They're like, ooh, what
Facebook
is
posts
this?
verbatim. No, but I know it's like in 3 chunks, so I just need to remember what I said real quick.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I remember like
okay.
this, well, okay, just to preface this, like one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because of this post. Like, I mean, and also because of just like what we've been talking about, like you and I have been talking about, like leading up to the movie and how excited we are. But like the reason that we're so excited about this particular movie.
Yeah. So I posted on Facebook after the movie, just kind of the emotional, spiritual journey that I've made to this film, which whatever, I love this stuff, so it doesn't matter. It's an emotional journey. So when I was a teenager, I discovered John Paul II's Theology of the Body, which I imagine people who are tuning into this will be at least sort of familiar with. And so John Paul II, through the Theology of the Body, taught me a ton of things and changed my life in a lot of ways. But the most important thing that I took from that, and the thing that really stuck in my heart the most from that, is the ontological account of women story as viewed through the lens of John Paul II. And something that never really escaped me from that is, you look at how the story of creation is told. God created, the universe, and then the earth, and then the animals, and the trees, and then he created man. And the last thing he created was Eve, the woman. And at that point, and only at that point, does he say that it's good. And so I'm of the opinion.
He says it's very
right,
good.
right. Angel's not going to let me get away with that. So I walked away from that with this idea that God is all good, all powerful, and all knowing. And so if there was something better for him to give this world, to give creation, he would know what it is. He would want to give it to us, and he would be able to give it to us. And yet the last thing, the little crown jewel, the cherry on top of creation that he gives us, and then he's good, he doesn't have to give us anything else, is the woman. And so to me, woman is the most beautiful part of creation. So I said that John Paul II's Theology of the Body taught me that woman was God's greatest creation. So that happened when I was maybe 17, 18, I started to realize that. When I was 19, 20-ish, I discovered Wonder Woman, and I saw in her the things that I saw in the feminine genius of Theology of the Body. That basically, when we discuss femininity and feminism and equality and that sort of thing, we kind of have to, in the culture, separate femininity from the feminine. And it doesn't make any sense to me. When you look at Wonder Woman, she is simultaneously the most powerful being in the DC universe and feminine. She is powerful and yet compassionate. She is beautiful and yet liberated. She's independent and yet she's willing to attach herself to others in love. So it's that great Catholic both and. We don't have to sacrifice one thing for the other. We have them all together. And Wonder Woman gave me a way together in a package for people to understand what I meant when I talked about women, the way that I talked about women, or at least tried to. Mm-hmm. And then this movie, as you said in the beginning, you knew who Wonder Woman was. I think everybody knows in a way who Wonder Woman is, but they don't see into her heart. They don't see into her core. They don't see into her character. They don't see the things that I'm talking about. And so when I left the movie, I thought, oh man, that stuff's all on display. Like, she's there, like, but she's also like freaking throwing a tank, and like it's all this cool stuff. And so I came out of the theater thinking, now people are gonna get it when I'm trying to tell them what I'm talking about. And that's maybe more than anything what moved me so much about this movie, is how much they got it right in terms of bringing to light the feminine genius. And I don't know Patty Jenkins personally. I don't know if she's a Catholic or a devotee of Theology of the Body. But the transcendent truths in the Theology of the Body are on display in that movie in a way that I've never seen in anything pop culture before. And it really, really affected me. And I'm going to stop mansplaining now and let you talk.
No, like, I think it's cool that, you start off like with that, because, I mean, you see it everywhere now. Like, people are talking about this movie and it's like, oh, we've got to get all the women to talk about this movie and what it means to them, which is very important. Like, right? I mean, yeah. It's so important. But like, I think it's also really important to get men's perspective on this movie too, because of a lot of the things that you said, like how she is depicted, like, and just, you use kind of some language that maybe is like also like Catholic geeky stuff, but like the feminine genius concept that you brought up is something that it's a phrase that John Paul II also came up with. to
Oh, I thought I
describe.
came up with that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I came up with that just now. Okay, whatever. Great minds think alike.
I
Whatever.
know, I'm sorry. I took that glory away from you, but but it's a really great phrase that basically sums up like the gifts that women have that only women have. Like, and that's one of the cool things that I've learned from, you know, like since I was 15, like I took a journey to where I was like, well, I was brought up Catholic, but let me actually see if this is something I want to continue like believing in, like pursuing, like, because that's when I was like at the point where like, okay, are you going to get confirmed in the Catholic faith or not? So I was really like serious about looking into it. Like anybody who knows me knows that like I'm going to research something before I make an important decision. And so that's what I did. And one of the cool things that I found out was about all this stuff and what the church actually says about women. And so like the feminine genius concept, like, you know, when I was growing up, like I never really identified with like what a lot of society says is what it means to be a woman, because I was geeky and I liked basketball and I liked classic rock and like, you know, just a lot of things that, you know, I never dreamed of getting married or anything like that. So, but when I learned about this stuff and what the church said about women, I was like, oh man, like this is something that I want to be. Like, I want to be a woman. Like I want, you know, I like this and I can, you know, I want to embrace it. So like the feminine genius idea, like I think that's shown a lot in the character of Diana of Wonder Woman. That like what the way the church kind of talks about it is that the gifts of women are receptivity, generosity, sensitivity, and maternity. And I mean, we could go into like detail on those later when we're going to spoilers, but because there's so many moments like where she really like, you know, displays those things. But I love like how she really does like you were talking about, like she is so strong and she is a demigod, but she is like also these things like I don't think this is too big of a spoiler, but like she goes like and she sees a baby and she's like, oh my gosh, it's a baby. Like she's really excited
Yeah.
about it. And then
Which
she's
is
like,
my response to seeing a baby every time, by the way.
but I just like, you know, it's part of her like character and her background that she's excited about a baby, but it's also like, here's a woman, like, and she's attracted to a baby. But then at the same time, like she's also, you know, fighting and leading all these men in battle and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I just thought it was so cool. So yeah, I think what just like one, just to kind of like sort of guide like some of the things we want to talk about, because I know we kind of want to explode a little bit with like everything, but like I really wanted to read this quote because when I think about what this movie says about women and like kind of reminds women about who they are, I think about this quote that Pope Paul VI actually wrote in 1965. So I guess most people know that like when the Catholic Church was like going through some renewal in like the 60s, that we had like a universal, like a worldwide council of leaders in the church, which did include women, by the way. And one of the final messages that was sent by the council to the world was this address to women. And so this is like one of the most popular quotes that is like used now to talk about the church's teaching on women. But it says this: the hour is coming, in fact has come, when the vocation of woman is being achieved in its fullness, the hour in which woman acquires in the world an influence, an effect, and a power never hitherto achieved. Our technology ruins the risk of becoming inhuman. Reconcile men with life, and above all, we beseech you, watch carefully over the future of our race. Hold back the hand of man, who in a moment of folly might attempt to destroy human civilization. Women of the entire universe, whether Christian or non-believing, you to whom life is entrusted at this grave moment in history, it is for you to save the peace of the world.
I'm with her.
Like, drop the mic, walk away. Like, like, I just think that's so epic, but it's true. Like, women don't realize like how important they are a lot of times, like, and how much power they have. Like, so yeah, like, I just thought that was so cool.
Or how much power and how essential God has made them to his vision for the world.
Yeah.
About. That's the thing. Because, oh man, I don't know if we want to go down this route, but like, people just have this view of the Catholic Church, I think. In a lot of ways, we've given them reason to think it. That the Catholic Church does not hold women in high regard. And then you read something like this, and it's like, oh no, the Catholic Church thinks that women are the best part of life. Like,
yeah,
I
I mean, like,
so
well, yeah, like, it's, you know, and just to kind of briefly address that, like, in every human institution and in every like human experience, like, there's always people, you know, I think every person like holds certain beliefs that you really believe in, but you have difficulty living out every single time like you're in that situation. And, you know, that's the way it is, like, just with humanity. So yeah, there are times definitely when, you know, the church, people in the church, I guess I should say is more accurate, like, haven't been respectful to women. But the great thing that I've learned, like, in, you know, just being involved in ministry and like being able to like actually get paid to like spend time like learning about these things, like, there's so much that I wasn't taught like in school, like, about the power of women in the history of the church and like how important women have been and been allowed to be. So that's just a whole nother topic. But
yeah,
anyway, so
that'll be a part 2.
Yes. So okay, so maybe we can like open it up to spoilers now. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's do it. Let's spoil the movie.
Spoil it.
So if you're watching this and you haven't seen the Wonder Woman movie, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Can't blame us. Don't get mad, Angela. Spoilers from now on.
Okay. So, okay, one thing that I really loved at the beginning was the when Hippolyta is giving the story to Diana about like how creation happened.
Yes.
And first of all, it was visually stunning, but second of all, like, just it struck me as not really Greek, like not really, like very Christian in nature, like sort of like with Greek names to things. I don't know, like,
right.
If you got that same impression or not.
It reminded me of a quote from Father Richard Rohr, who I know you're familiar with. He's a bit of a controversial thinker, but he said, all myths are true and sometimes actually happened. Mm-hmm. And so I watched that scene unfold, and they were just telling the Christian creation myth, but instead of using, you know, the Christian God, they were using the Greek mythology to tell the same story. Yeah, and like I had no idea about like the Amazon. Is it Amazons or Amazonians? Amazons. Okay, so the Amazons, like, it seemed like the way that it was explained in the story, that they're kind of like what we consider to be angels, like they're like guardians of humanity. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Tolkien's elves and how he envisioned them to be like humans before the fall. Like, if we had stayed the course the way God had intended us to be, we would look like this.
Mhm.
It was along that same line with the Amazons in this version, at least.
Right. So, and then the other cool thing was, well, Zeus created mankind in his image, and I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, really? Like, I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
I wonder where you got that from, Patty Jenkins.
And
Where have I
then,
heard
like,
that before?
yeah, and then like Ares was jealous of mankind, right? Is that correct? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
and so he's like, he just revolted, and then yeah, like, it was basically like the
Yeah,
concept of
he was
Satan.
jealous of the fact that man would get to, I guess, occupy and or rule the world
Okay.
when the world was perfect as it was before man, is his thing.
Hmm. Yeah. So like he kind of what I guess we can get into it now, like even though it's kind of at the end of the movie, but I really liked how they portrayed Ares, like, and how he
Yeah,
presented himself, like how he's like, well, no, I wasn't the general, like I was the guy who was kind of like slipping ideas to everybody,
yeah, exactly. Where we heard that before. And there's a kind of a montage, I guess, of him like kind of in a translucent, ghostly appearance, like literally whispering in the ears of all these like antagonists throughout the film. Um, Again, it's the Christian story again, just being told through a different lens.
Yeah, like, and he tells her like, well, mankind is ugly and prone to hatred and stuff like that, but and it's at the end like where she's just kind of like so upset herself, but then she thinks about Steve and like, you know, she says, yeah, they are all those things, but there's so much more.
Yeah,
And I really liked that. It wasn't like, no, they're not like that. It was like, yeah, they are. Like, I've seen that and it
definitely.
really sucks.
Yeah, and that moment where she realizes that too is hard when she thinks she's killed Ares and she looks around and nothing's changed, and you see that moment of like
Yeah.
that realization she has that no, men are terrible. Like there is such thing as evil in the world, and it looks like human beings who want to hurt other human beings on their own
Mhm.
with no, they're not being compelled explicitly. This is what they want to do. And Gal Gadot, and I never gave her credit as an actress because the first time I saw her was in Fast and Furious movies. But she acted the heck out of that scene, dude.
Oh my
You see the
gosh.
heartbreak in her face when she realized like Ares is dead. Why is this still happening? And it really breaks her for a while. Steve Trevor has to go, finish the mission without her because she's broken at the idea that no, like there are bad people.
Yeah. And, another thing that, well, that part made me cry. I think probably the most actually, like when she's like, I am like Diana, and she's like, she's getting ready to do it. And I was just like crying like hysterically. And then like she does it, and then she looks around and like nothing happened. And it was really like powerful. And I also like on that related topic, like when she was looking at Steve and she was saying like, well, like they actually through the whole, like their whole relationship, they had this kind of discussion about the things that he was doing that weren't all like
Right.
pure, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that where she kind of realized like, oh yeah, like he's making these evil choices too. Like but I know he's good and I love him, but he's making these evil choices too. It was really cool. Like just the, just the acknowledgement of that. I feel like generally in the past, at least superhero movies have been very black and white. And I think a lot of people like that, like
Yeah.
Star Wars, the original Star Wars was like very black and white. You knew who the bad guys were, you knew who the good guys were. But I think now, like pop culture, we're just getting to the point where our society is kind of more mature to realize like we can work this into our stories now.
Definitely. And I think that in of itself is a very Catholic thing that
Yeah.
in a more without, I don't mean to be to talk down to other faith traditions, but in more simple Christian
Or
beliefs.
like fundamentalist maybe, or
Yeah, I don't mean simple in terms of intelligence. I mean simple in terms of how deep they get into defining things. Um, the ethics are very black and white, and it leaves no middle room for a gray area. And I think that Catholic ethics, being more of a virtue ethics approach, leaves room for the gray area. And I think that's okay. As I tell people, yes, there are gray areas, but you can't have gray without black and white, right? And so
yeah.
there are black and white moral laws, and then all this messy area in the middle where you navigate using those laws, these kind of weird waters. Um,
It's almost like well, it's what we call like prudential judgment in Catholic
sure.
tradition. That like you have black and white that are very clear, but then there are certain areas where the church doesn't say like this particular action that you make in your, daily life with your family and your conscience and your like all these little specific things. Like the church doesn't give like a yes and no, right and wrong for every single possible situation. And that's
Right.
prudential judgment. That's a lot of the gray area, that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back into the movie, like one of the other things that I liked about it, before we get into like Diana specifically, is just how like, she's so naive, like in man's world when she's coming in. So she like we're seeing everything through her eyes, and it's amazing how they did this. But like we see like the injustice of so many
Yeah.
situations that we are kind of used to, or at least are waking up to, I think, like in our world. um, but in the World War I era, like definitely were not appreciated as much. Like for example, when she's in like I guess it is the Parliament room or something like that, where the guys are
Yeah, something
arguing.
governmental.
Yeah, and they're arguing about what to do about the war, and Steve tells her like, no, you have to wait outside. And she just goes in, and
Yeah.
everybody's like, what is a woman doing in here? Get her out of here. And just the way that they treat her is so clearly like sexist and terrible and unnecessary. But it just like it makes it so obvious, and I really liked it. I don't know why I liked it so much, but it was just, I guess because it was just so like, well, she knows what, like she's the best person to have in this situation. So
Yeah. Yeah.
why aren't you allowing her to speak? Or like even when they were like, oh, she speaks all these languages, like, oh
Hmm.
really?
Yeah, I think something that the movie did really well that I appreciated, um, as a man, is when you see moments like that in pop culture, it's usually very like hyperbolic and explicit. But there's like her walking through the streets of London, and then her jacket opens up, and she's just wearing the Wonder Woman suit, and Steve Trevor's like, "Hey, like, hey, we have to get you clothes or whatever." Um, it's kind of subtle, but as I watch it, I'm like, "Oh, that's a man. That's man's problem."
Mm.
When a woman is dressed revealingly, that's not the woman's problem. That's their problem. You can kind of see like he's the bad guy here, even if he's not explicitly, being disgusting or terrible. There's just these little subtle nods, and that's why I talk about when I say that you can tell this was executed by women. Is it's so plain as day. So like, oh yeah, this is how things are. Do you not see this every day?
Yeah.
And it's a good teaching moment, I think, for men who aren't as woke as myself.
Yeah, and because I think pretty much every woman has been in this situation where like she's in the room with like the general, and they're trying to figure out what the next move is, and she's like, "Oh, that's a combination of Sumerian and something else," and they're like, oh, who is this lady? And like, are we gonna let her, well, I guess we can let her read it, like it's
I was
so
gonna read it, but I mean, if she's here, we can, I guess.
I know it was so stupid, but it's just yeah. And then like also the just how she asks these questions where like when they're in the foxhole and she's like, well, why is this happening? Like, why can't we help these people? And it just shows the senselessness of war and how horrible it is, and how like people on both sides make terrible, decisions in the name of whatever, and she just sees it with such a purity, and she
Definitely.
sees with her heart.
That's one reason why I love that they said it in World War One. As we said earlier, Diana came about in World War II, and in my opinion, we have seen every World War II movie that we should ever see. There's like 6,000 of them, and it would have been a bummer to see one more with Wonder Woman. And that's not even getting into the Captain America parallels. But the thing I love about the World War I context is in World War II, you had these terrible battles where thousands died, but at the end of the day, oh, we gained this village, or oh, we moved towards Berlin, or oh, we moved towards Tokyo. In World War I, you just sat in trenches and died by the tens of thousands, and then the lines didn't move, and you didn't advance, and nothing was really accomplished. And so it's that much more senseless and that much more brutal when people are killed, and that much more heartbreaking for someone like Diana.
Mm-hmm. So since you're on that like particular, or we're on that particular scene, like I've heard a lot of guys say that No Man's Land, like that particular scene where she walks out onto it and she just goes and she's like, well, I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that was like the most powerful scene for a lot of guys. Did you have like a favorite scene, or like something that really hit you like that?
I don't know that was my favorite. It was definitely the first, because it's the first time you see her in her full Wonder Woman outfit when she comes out of the trench. And I think my favorite is when they're just tearing through that village, because I'm a boy. I like to see the heroes being heroes. I like to see people getting their butts whooped. But there's something about that scene. You're right. The way the score is and the way the men in the trench react to her. She is the most powerful thing in that scene.
Yeah.
And she is the bravest person in that scene and the most capable in that scene. And to me, that was the reveal of Wonder Woman. Like, you had the reveal of her suit, but you had the reveal of her character in man's world.
I think at that point, she was just tired of people not doing anything. And she was just like, okay, I'm sick of this. I'm going to get out there and do something.
And I love what you said earlier. You kind of just threw it out there, but she leads that charge. They all, she's running and everyone's focusing on her, and it lets everybody else move up. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very powerful scene. Again, without being explicit. It's not like there's a guy in the trench being like, she's a woman, we can't follow her, and another guy like, come on, man, we gotta go. It's very subtle and just beautiful, the way they do it.
Yeah,
and I cried. That's one of the scenes where I cried.
Well, one of the cool things about that too is that the way that Steve like interacts with her, he doesn't treat her like, oh shoot, like, she's a woman and she's doing all the work. Like, he really just treats her like what she is, like who she is. And he knows that she's going to be able to make things happen for the team, and just accepts that and runs with it. Like, I don't think you really even see him like thinking it through, like, oh crap, she's a woman. What are we, I think that's just, I really like that.
He figures out, I think in that scene, I guess, oh, she's a fellow soldier. She's a fellow warrior. And at that point, she just becomes part of the team. And again, I love that the movie doesn't have a scene where Steve is like talking to one of the guys and they explicitly say, "Nah, man, she's one of us." They just like, boom, it's like that. He sees a charge and it's like, oh, okay, let's do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's more everybody's experience. Like in the real world, I think when a woman is finally like accepted, I think a lot of times it's just because she just proves herself and she's just out there. And I don't think guys just sit around. I mean, that's just my guess is that guys don't just sit around and think like, oh, like this woman is doing this and I'm so embarrassed and blah, blah, blah.
Now, when we have our secret man meetings, we bring it up. And on a case-by-case basis, we permit women to work with us.
Well, but yeah, like I did like that about like Diana and Steve. And like they developed this real like respect for each other. And eventually like a love, romantic love. But I think it didn't strike me like a romance like you would find in a lot of movies.
Right.
And I thought that was so extraordinary that it wasn't on the surface. I think so many romances in Hollywood are really just so, yeah, just shallow. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a scene, not to get too provocative, where it is implied that Steve and Diana are sharing the night together.
Yeah.
And to me, it wasn't like a 50 Shades thing, and it wasn't like a rom-com thing. It was like, I don't know, this is me watching as a man, like, oh, we just did battle, now we must. It's very warrior-like. And I'm glad you brought up the love story, because I've seen a few blogs and stuff where they talk about, oh, they gave Wonder Woman her first story or her first movie and she falls in love. But like, women love people. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of it. It would have been dumb to be like, oh, here's this perfect woman icon and, an example of all the women we know in the world, except that she has no feelings for anybody at all.
Yeah. And I think actually like...
And so I thought it was...
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I thought it was really important that Steve Trevor be in the movie and be that person in the movie. And they did it in a way that respects both sides. I guess we'll talk about that later, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, like I think they learned from each other. And that's very clear. Like they were teaching each other a lot of really powerful things, like especially towards the end with the whole Ares thing, like, and she's just, yelling and screaming at him. And he's like, it's not about deserve. And I really liked that line. Like it's not about deserve. I don't like, he was trying to explain something that is so deep and transcendent, I think, about just the reality of humanity. Yeah. And so he was trying to teach her, and I think he ended up teaching her more through her example, like his example of love. Like at the end when he sacrifices himself and she also like, gives everything that she has, like because of him. I think it's really just like in our faith tradition, there's this term of like sincere gift of self or mutual self gift. And I thought that was really like, even though it's not the traditional, like they got married and, that type of thing, but it was like a superhero way of sort of, illustrating that concept.
Definitely. I love the line, it's not about deserve. Because again, it gets to the transcendent truths that strike me as a Christian. The idea, Christ didn't take the cross because I deserved it. He took it because he loves me and because it's the right thing to do. And I was talking to a friend last night. He texted me, how do you love pro-choice people? And I'm like, my first answer to him, and we talked about it after that, was that, well, because people love me, and why should they love me at all when I'm a terrible person and God loves me? And you know, if I'm okay with that, then we need to be okay with loving the people that we don't care much about. And I love that was kind of the synthesis of the movie. It's not about deserve. And that's what I was kind of getting at earlier, by the way, with the way they wrapped up that love story with Steve Trevor just dying. I had no idea that was coming.
Oh, really?
When the plane blew up, because I thought the whole time I was watching it, and there's like, you know, it holds on him like about to detonate the bombs, and it takes a while. So I'm like, oh, like he's gonna find a parachute, or oh, Diana's gonna get up there and save him, and then he just blows up, and I was in the theater just like, no. So just on back in the, you know, the outside world, she gets to have her love interest, and now she's apart from it, and she gets to tell her own story. And it was a really smart way of doing that and satisfying everyone in the audience, I think.
Yeah.
So side note.
Yeah. And not to beat a dead horse, but you know, that whole it's not about deserve thing. Like I think Diana kind of her understanding kind of builds up to that concept. Like she has the foundation for it, like just in who she is, like to understand that. Like with I really like, she has these simple exchanges with the other members of the team, like Sammy and Charlie, where Sammy like kind of says like, well, I wanted to be an actor, but I'm the wrong color. And it's about race. And she just kind of like, you see that she like cares for him and like love and like cares about him and like who he is and his story and what he really wants out of life, like in that moment. Like that's what I got out of it. And then the other part where before that, where Charlie like has kind of like a PTSD like moment where he wakes up and he's just freaking out, and then
you are safe, she tells him.
Yeah.
She gets it immediately.
Yeah, and she's like, well, who are we gonna have to sing like if you leave, you know? And
come on.
And to me that was such like a woman moment, like a Wonder Woman moment too, but just a woman moment where she was like, she knew what to say to him, like to make him know that he is seen, you know, like how women just kind of, they can just recognize somebody like in their humanity, like on a really deep level. Like I really liked that.
I love that you just put that scene in a whole different light for me. Because if Steve Trevor goes up, he says, hey man, we need you for the mission, like keep your eye on the prize, blah blah blah. He's talking up here. Wonder Woman comes down here. Who's gonna sing for us? Angela! So good.
Yeah, so that's how I saw those moments where like she has that, like we were talking about, like the receptivity, the generosity, like the sensitivity and the maternity, and how like she has that in her, but she has to learn how to apply it. And she kind of learns, like she goes from being a child in a way where she was believing like her mother's stories on this simplistic level, to like being a woman and understanding like the reality of life and people, and like how to be a woman and like how to use her gifts. And you know, because at the end she's like, okay, well now I realize that like only love can bring peace, you know, like and that's my mission now. And I think that was just so that's like the story of every woman. I think ultimately like you become a woman when you realize that, you know.
Wow. That's awesome.
So what other like moments did you have, like just looking at her and like how awesome she is, like in her character, and like when you said all those things about the theology of the body and like all that, like what was it? Can you think of like specific moments where, you know, that really was revealed to you?
I need to see the movie about 15 more times.
Yeah.
Because I was so like shocked. It was so shock and awe for me that there's so much that I can't like pull out of my memory. It's just this general emotion of being amazed. But I'd say altogether, it just as a unit, the movie showing, like we're talking about, the parts where Diana is nurturing and is speaking from the heart and speaking to people's hearts don't contradict or go against or diminish the parts where Diana is just like whooping ass. And just
I think they really enrich them, and like it's crazy how like for a superhero movie, like usually you expect all these like just nonstop action. Like obviously there has to be some dialogue, but like with this particular one, like the dialogue really enhanced like the moments of action, and really like were some of the highlights. I mean, I've heard people say like their favorite moment was like when she and Steve were just in the boat talking, or like in, you know, just together talking in any part, you know.
Patty Jenkins did such a great job of not being afraid of the dialogue. I think more so than any superhero movie I can think of, this movie really will stop, and will be bold enough to stop and just put two people on a frame to have a discussion without being worried about, well, we got to get to this next fight, or we got to listen to what Diana has to say to Steve here. Yeah, that's another, just in a movie sense, really special thing about this movie.
Yeah, and like one thing I just thought about too, the Dr. Poison character, like I did like that it was, the antagonist was a woman. I don't feel like this particular character was particularly strong, but I don't think she really needed to be, because I don't think she was the actual antagonist of the movie. Like I think the actual antagonist was Ares, but
right.
She was one of the bad guys, you know, quote unquote. And I love the scene at the end where Diana's trying to decide what to do, and she's got that big, I don't know, was it a tank or like some big thing like that she's holding up, and she's like looking at Dr. Poison like she's ready to throw it on her, and she's going through that whole, you know, thought process that we talked about. And she decides not to kill her. Like, I really like that, because it goes back to what you were talking about, like with just loving people who do things that we don't agree with, or even that we think are egregious, you know, or completely unjust or whatever. Like, when you learn that you have to love that person, and that's how you will bring peace, like that was so powerful to me, because you apply that to real life, and it's like, whoa, you know.
It's so easy to, you know, to be like, oh, well, I have to love the people who disagree with me. And that's true, but that's not the message. That's not the point of the faith. You're supposed to love people you hate. You're supposed to love the people who legitimately don't deserve it. People who legitimately have harmed you, or harmed people you love, or done terrible things. That's who the gospel is calling you to love. And
it's not easy. Like, and I like that she...
I don't do it.
Yeah. Well, I like that she really struggled with it, because I think every real person like struggles with that, you know, like has to go through that process. And obviously it's not as short and simple as it has to be in a movie, but I like that she did struggle with it, because, you know, again, like just your, you know, basic, you know, I'm not a comic book person, so your basic typical understanding of like, you know, a superhero is like somebody who does the right thing all the time and like doesn't ever have to think about it. And I think a lot of times people think of like that Christians should be that way. Even Christians think like, I might be like, me being a Christian, like I like, you know, put myself through the runner because I don't act a certain way. Like, oh, I'm supposed to just automatically do the right thing, you know? So it's cool. Like, it's important to like think back on that, you know, just imagine myself like holding up that tank, like, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely important to see your heroes struggle with that. Even Jesus struggled with doing the right thing, and in Gethsemane, he prayed that the cup would pass. So Wonder Woman is Jesus, I think, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, so this was a great movie, and I'm sure, like, the more that I go back and watch it and ponder it, like, I'll come up with more kind of cool stuff, great stuff. But yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
I think I just want to really reiterate, if we haven't sold it already, go watch this movie. Go watch it 1,000 times. I would say, if you can, go get the books. I'm a big proponent of actually reading the comic books. This movie in particular is very faithful to the New 52 run of Wonder Woman. That's where we get her origin as Zeus's daughter, whereas before she was just she was made from clay and brought to life. There's some cool stuff about her bracelets in the New 52. We didn't talk about this at all, but one of my favorite things is that they're called the bracelets of submission, and they used to be, when she was first created, right? It was a callback to them being slaves. In the New 52, the Amazons still wear them, but hers were crafted by the smith to the gods to restrain her power. And so in my head canon, they restrains her power to that of her opponent. And so that's how she can punch a soldier and not explode him, and then go and like punch Ares and kill him. So we actually never see the full strength of Wonder Woman. That's why I say she's the most powerful being in the DC universe. So read the books, see the movie, and just in general, especially these days, I feel the church is, and I know we don't want to get in this conversation, I feel like vocal Catholics, Catholic media, the people who are kind of influencing the Catholics that I know, have done such a bad job of defending women these days. And so my biggest thing is, don't be afraid to side with the church over any other ideologies that might demand that you treat women less than they deserve.
So like go read, like I was saying, the address of the Second Vatican Council. Yes. Go read, it's called Mulieris Dignitatem, but you can, that's like Latin. So just search for John Paul II on the vocation and dignity of woman, which was written in 1988. And then Letter to Women, which was written by John Paul II in 1995. And those are like kind of the big three. But there's a lot of good stuff that Pope Francis has been talking about, especially with relation to grandmothers. And the power of a grandmother and a mother. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff out there that you've got to read what the what the church, like, go from the source, and yeah, just and read Edith Stein. She was a former atheist Jew who converted to Catholicism and was a philosopher, and she wrote about women. And there's a lot of good books out there, and so if you're interested, just ask me and I'll give you a bunch of recommendations. So yeah, cool stuff.
And follow Angela Cialana, because when I think of you wouldn't have let me do this if I put it in the notes, but when I think of Catholic women and just Catholic people who you should be living like, I think of Angela among others. So
oh, thanks, Ray.
A lot of my views about women have been informed by my friendship with you. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So now I'm gonna go cry, and
I'm gonna go get tickets. I'm serious, to see it tonight. I'm gonna go see where it's showing.
Awesome. Oh, and by the way, I also sweat while watching this movie.
Cool.
Okay, so I guess we'll just end it there. And thanks for watching and listening. and goodbye.